for it, but I do. And I think it's a way you can learn more too, actually. And it makes the class far less boring. And listen to me every single chapter talk about it. So anyway, lots of interaction. There we go.
Can everybody see that, or do you need it bigger?
It's fine.
So chapter 26 is over internal and governmental financial auditing, and then also operational auditing. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple, so it shouldn't take very long to get through.
Only an hour and 15 minutes. Yeah.
So, and then I found some questions on Quizlet, so we can go through those if we have some extra time. So starting with internal financial auditing. Internal auditing is obviously inside a business. The performers of the audit are the employees of the entity. It's an independent, objective assurance consulting agency.
Okay, independent. Now, can they be independent if they're internal? You just said they work for the company. Are they independent? Yes. Not really. Not really. They can be objective. They can't be independent. But they like to think of themselves as being independent, but by definition, they're not. And under AICPA rules, are they independent? No, they're not. By definition, they're not. So when the internal auditors say, oh, we're independent, but what they mean is they're independent of the management who they are auditing. And how do they achieve that? It's really getting as objective as possible, separate as possible. How do you achieve that? Who do they report to? Yeah, directly to the audit committee of the board. So the external auditors report directly to the audit committee of the board, and you want your internal auditors, the head of internal audit, to report directly there too. Why would you not want the head of internal audit to report to the president of the company? How could they audit the president of the company's work? Got it? Okay, so it makes them more objective, more independent, sort of. It's a sort of, right? So the stuff is hard to define. By the way, does internal auditing have to be done by employees of the company, or could outside CPAs perform the internal audit function for a company? Yes, you could. But if you do, what about your independence for doing a compilation review or audit? Now that we had a compilation review, we can talk about that in the same breath, can't we? You have to be independent for those, don't we? So if you were doing internal audit function for a company, can you be their CPA for doing their audit? No. By definition, you're not independent. So that goes back to this, well, are they independent or not? Well, no, right? Not by that definition. Okay, so cool. That's good. Boy, you said a lot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
And then it's used to add value or improve an organization's operations, so they can use the results of an internal audit to improve different areas of the company. And it also can improve or evaluate the effectiveness of risk that they have.
In fact, this is what makes internal auditing really fun. What is the purpose of internal auditing versus external? An external auditor comes in and they are going to give an opinion on the financial statements, right? And an opinion on internal controls, right? Outside. The internal people, what are they trying to do? You're going to talk about efficiency and effectiveness, and the two combined together is really economy, right? What's going on with this? You're trying to make profit, right? That's what you're doing. You're trying to make more money, right? Do a better job, deliver better products, improve your quality, right? So it's a whole different perspective. That doesn't mean the internal auditors are loved by the people that they're auditing inside the business. You're still an auditor, right? But at least your goal is to improve the profitability of the company. Yeah.
And the traditional roles or responsibilities of an internal auditor would be reviewing the reliability and the information that they have collected, ensuring that the company is complying with laws and regulations, and also safeguarding the assets of the company. And I know we've kind of touched on this, but the objective of an internal auditor is more flexible than an external, because an external auditor, they have to follow a specific guideline and the standards that are set forth in front of them. But an internal auditor can really audit anything that management wants them to and look at any information that management is interested in. So they are more flexible in that way. And then internal auditors follow the guidance of the IIA, or the Institute of,
You have to start over.
no, you're
Is
right.
that recording? Yeah. I thought we didn't start. I guess we did. Scared me.
Yeah, I get you.
I wouldn't really make you start over. That'd be funny. Take two, right? Here we go.
No. So they follow the Institute of Internal Auditors. And then the certification program that goes along with that is the Certified Internal Auditor exam. The code of ethics that they follow are the internal standards for the professional practice of internal auditing that is set forth by the IIA. And if you look at figure 21.6 in the chart on page 809, it sets out the ethical principles of integrity, which establishes trust and provides reliance, objectivity, just making sure that the auditor has a balanced assessment, obviously confidentiality and competency, that they have the skills and knowledge to perform the audit.
These are basically the same as we have for external auditing, right? They're really close, except they call it objectivity instead of independence. They're going to be objective instead of independent, right? That's all. So, yeah. Okay, sure.
And then also the rules of conduct are set out in that chart under each one of the ethical principles. So, for example, integrity.
I wouldn't have those memorized or anything. I just have a general idea of this. The ones they're going to beat you up on are the auditing ones, right? External auditor ones. This chapter is not. It won't be heavily tested. Let's put it that way on the CPA exam. And the same with the previous chapter on reviews and compilations, not heavily tested. But in a lot of auditing classes, apparently they don't cover it all because it's not auditing. They don't get it anywhere. So there'll be some questions, so it's good to look at it, right? That's the timeline. It's part of doing it, of course. So you know what you're doing when you get out there. Plus a whole bunch of you that go to work for smaller firms, either your first firm or your second firm might be a smaller firm. You're going to be living in a world of compilations and reviews, not audits anyway. But there's a lot fewer standards relating to those than there are to audits, okay? And the CPA exam is really oriented more towards the big firms than just this.
So the rules of conduct section basically just give examples for each of the ethical principles. So integrity, it says they need honesty and responsibility. They shall not knowingly be a party to any illegal activity. Confidentiality, they shall be prudent in the use and protection of information. Cannot participate in anything contrary to the law. So it's pretty straightforward, but there are a bunch of examples if you need those in that chart. And then moving on to figure 26.2 are the international standards. And they're broken down into attribute standards and performance standards. So you can see all of the code numbers are with all of the different sections. So the attribute standards are purpose, independence, objectivity, professional care, quality assurance, and then there's examples of each of those. And then
Notice they use independence in the international definition, right? Independence and objectivity.
And then performance would be the engagement planning, performing the engagement, and then communicating the results back to management.
Think about what internal controls do. In fact, first, is internal audit, having a good internal audit operation, does that make your internal controls better, stronger, or weaker? Right? Stronger, right? It's part of the internal controls. So this is a major function of your internal controls. If you come in and you're the outside independent auditor and you're evaluating the company's internal controls, if you find out that they have a very strong internal audit operation, can you rely upon that when you are evaluating controls? Yes, right? You still have to test the controls, of course. You have to make sure they're doing their job, right? Is then part of that. So you evaluate how good their internal audit operation is. It's part of their system of internal control in a company. And they're trying to make the company more profitable. That's what internal controls are for, right? So this is an integral part of that. What are internal controls? What are the things that we do with internal controls? What are the three basic functions? It crossed my mind when you said monitoring. That's one of them, isn't it? Some internal controls monitor what's going on. So what are they?
Reliability of the financials.
Yes, reliability of the financials, that's true. From an accounting perspective, although internal control can be, I price my products right, I produce my product properly, I'm maintaining my trucks, all kinds of things, right? And keeping the roof repaired, really, it's internal control of the business. But monitoring is one of the functions that we look for with internal controls, right? Monitoring activities. Remember we did these? We did internal control. What are they? What do you want to do? What do you want to separate? Activities you want to separate. Remember those? Monitoring's one of them. Custody. There we go. There's one. Monitoring's two. Authorization's one. Recording's one. Right? So we got custody, record keeping, right? Authorization. I guess authorization comes before record keeping, and monitoring activities. Right, you guys? And all those things will help us safeguard assets and help us make sure things are recorded properly. Okay, they use the same terms even across these chapters, don't they? And it's all the same stuff. Okay, good.
And the internal auditing standards are issued by the IASB. Now we're going to jump into the difference between internal and external, which we've kind of already touched on.
What does IASB stand for? Everybody in unison, what does that stand for?
Internal Accounting Standards Board.
These are the international ones you said were. That's the IASB.
I thought that's what it was.
Internal or international? You said the international ones are issued by, who issues the U.S. ones?
It says the statements on internal auditing standards are issued by the Internal Auditing Standards Board.
Okay, that's in the U.S. or that's international?
It says.
Which one's which? What do you guys think? Figure 2.2 on page 36. You see AOB's 10 generally accepted auditing standards as detailed in figure 2.2 on page 36 denote similarities and differences. Statements on internal auditing standards are issued by the Internal Auditing Standards Board. Okay, so is that different than the International Auditing Standards? International Standards Auditing Standards Board. Yeah, the international is for what? External audits. Okay, sure. Okay. Who issues the U.S. ones? We have U.S. ones here too. Our institute. That's the Institute of Internal Auditors, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, sure. Okay. You were right. Go ahead.
Okay.
Too many different names though.
Yes.
Huh?
There's a lot in this chapter.
Too many different groups.
Yes. So internal auditors are responsible to management and the board, like we've talked about. External auditors are responsible to financial statement users. So that's where obviously internal and external come in. And then similarities between the two. They both have to be competent and remain objective. There are similarities in the way that they perform the audit, so plan the audit and execute the audit. And they both consider risk and materiality. I cannot say that word, but you can read it.
Material.
Materiality.
Not quite. Materiality. There you go.
The relationship between internal and external auditors. When internal auditors are effective, they can save money for their company when they are working with external auditors, because external auditors can perform the audit much faster if the internal auditors are helping them, and so it will reduce their fees.
They're all really familiar. Can you rely upon work done? Can you use work done by internal auditors as audit evidence to support your opinion? Can you do that? Yes. Be careful. Can you have them collect evidence, do auditing, and rely on it? They're not in that framework. Can they do prepared by client schedules for you? Yes. Can you rely upon their work for the improvement of internal controls as long as you test that work and then reduce your substandard test? Sure. Can you have them pull samples for you under your direction, and making sure that you are really the one pulling the sample, they're not? Yeah, you can do stuff like that. But it's kind of a thin line. Do you ever want them to make auditing decisions and to collect evidence and evaluate evidence and test the evidence? No, because they're not independent. Okay, so you keep a really tight control over that. So you got to be really careful. How do they phrase the question? Can you rely on internal auditors' work? Of course you can. Can they collect evidence for you? No. Right? They're not independent. Got it? So that's the way you need to look at this.
And external auditors consider internal auditors to be effective when they are independent of what is being evaluated, they are competent and well-trained, and have performed relevant audits of internal controls and financial statements. So moving on to governmental financial auditing. That is when federal and state governments employ...
By the way, do governmental auditors do internal auditing? Yeah. Internal auditing, obviously for a governmental unit, governmental employees could do it, right? They're governmental auditors. External auditors could do it. Or for a corporation, internal auditors could do internal auditing, right? Okay, sure. So, but this is governmental financial auditing, right? Not internal auditing. Okay. So, who does this work, by the way? Who does governmental financial auditing? Could they be government employees? Yeah. Could they be external CPAs? Yes. Okay. In some states, they have a state audit office. Kentucky does, don't we? I believe we do. Okay, we have state auditors. In other states, Idaho is one, where they use CPA firms. It's a big practice for CPA firms in Idaho that the state doesn't do their own auditing in the local municipalities. Okay. So, yeah, this is a big area of practice. Both ways.
And their standards are the government auditing standards, which are issued by the Government Accountability Office, the GAO. And they also have generally accepted government auditing standards, similar to GAAP.
So the GAO is the what, guys? Government Accountability Office. Is that what it is? Not audit, right? Right. Okay. Yeah. So I'll ask you that kind of stuff. Okay. Good. Who are these guys? So now, are they auditing more than just the financial statements when we do governmental auditing? You've got information to be audited out there.
I know we have contracts.
You do more, don't you? Yeah. So you're looking, a lot of what you're doing is you're looking at whether or not they're using the money properly, right? Funding is being provided by the government, okay? A lot of times from the federal government to municipalities, to states, local governments, right? To corporations, to nonprofits, and governmental auditing would apply to those funds, okay? How they're using that money. All right, so they have their own rules. They say it's consistent with AICPA and PCAOB, but there's additional, okay, to get at these other issues: contracts, grants, internal control, fraud, non-compliance, okay, special reporting. So there's a lot more work in this area that gets done. Okay.
And also, I forgot to mention this, but the government auditing standards are usually referred to as the Yellow Book. So you'll see that a lot in the text. And it is consistent with the principles of the AICPA and also the PCAOB auditing standards.
It's called a Yellow Book because it used to be printed on yellow paper. No kidding. Yeah.
And it follows that, but it does contain additional information on materiality and significance. So the thresholds of the risk can be lower in a government audit. And this is because the government is much more sensitive to bad press. So obviously they want to find everything that they can.
And theft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they don't want it to be made public. And then also quality control, making sure that there is an appropriate system of internal control and also external control. Compliance auditing and also reporting. So it just basically gives more information.
Compliance is compliance with what, you guys? Law. It's legal compliance, right? And contractual compliance too.
And also, for an example, under quality control, it says that the auditors are involved in a governmental audit must complete 80 hours of continuing education each year. And then on the bottom of page 812, there's a case, the California City, I think it's called Bell City in California. The mayor was receiving a salary of $787,000, and they had the sale of 3 city bonds totaled $7 million. So basically, he was embezzling money, and the governmental auditors were the ones that found that. So I thought that was interesting.
This person made twice as much as the president of the U.S. Yeah.
And there's only 40,000 residents in that city.
So how would these 40,000 people pay that salary? What was it, $1.5 million for total benefits?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my gosh. And it wasn't just him. He paid bribes to all of his managers by giving them huge salaries too, so that he could get them to go along with his big salary. They were paying the board, right? City board members to get a lot of money too. And then everybody went in. So it's just this cartel they built to just fleece everybody. And not very affluent community, right? So they had huge debt built up, and so, and you know what? If it's kind of legal, crazy, yeah, So, but what happened to him? Whatever these guys do, you think?
They got arrested.
Yeah, they didn't actually get arrested. They got tried. I don't know if they ever spent any jail time. They just lost their jobs. But I think they got to keep the money that they taken and they spent it. So, yeah, is it important to look at nonprofits and to look at government organizations? Do you want to get something? Oh my, yeah, absolutely. So it amazes me when there's no audit on big bucks going through. It happens a lot. Yeah. Just that stuff.
And then the Single Audit Act of 1984 provided that a single coordinated audit needed to meet the audit requirements of all federal agencies. And this is for entities that receive more than $500,000 in federal funds. And then it sets forth the audit requirements in the compliance supplement for these types of audits. So they must be in accordance with the generally accepted government auditing standards. They must obtain an understanding of internal control over the federal programs that are being audited, and they should determine whether the client has complied with laws and regulations.
So what happened before this act? It was a mess. Before the Act of 94, everybody had their own rules. So each government, state government, municipalities, whatever, with cities and counties and so on, right, would have their own rules, and they're just all over the map. And so when you're trying to audit it, you have different auditing standards. And what this did, it's just wonderful. It standardized everything. So now, if you get more than $500,000 in federal funds, which, this is virtually every state, of course. It's any city of any size whatsoever. Little tiny towns might get less than that. But, this is just not very much money, really, right? So anything of any size that's getting government funding is going to have to be audited in accordance with the Single Audit Act. So all of a sudden, instead of CPA firms, if they were doing it, right, or if you went from governmental entity to governmental entity, right, even doing the audits, they had the same rules. It's wonderful. Dramatically reduced the amount of time spent and dramatically improved the quality of the audits. So before, it was a mess, is really the answer to that. And it's clear, in 1984, that's not that long ago, you guys, in the history of government funding for things, right? You know, so this was a wonderful thing. It does cost more to do these audits, but a lot of times people who are getting less funds than that aren't necessarily even doing an audit. So, you know, it does cost more to do these, but there's a lot better audits. That kind of answer it. Yeah.
And then it also sets forth that compliance requirements for these types of audits are the same as any other audit would be, but there also are specific requirements that must be met. Some examples of these are were the expenditures for allowable services, the individuals who receive services or benefits, were they able to receive them, and were matching requirements, levels of effort, and limitations met. So those are just some examples.
So it goes beyond doing an audit under governmental auditing standards, right?
Yes.
So you could have, if you're smaller and didn't get that much money, you can do an audit under governmental auditing standards, and then if you do get that much money, you add on the additional work. Does that make sense? Because you're already doing it under the governmental standards.
Yeah.
Good.
Now, moving on to an operational audit. These audits specifically deal with efficiency and effectiveness of an organization, which we'll get into the definitions of.
Who could do one of these audits? Could internal auditors do it? Yes. Could external auditors do it? Yes. Could governmental auditors do it?
Yes.
Okay, get the idea?
So first we're going to talk about the differences between an operational and a financial audit. So the purpose of an audit, financial auditing will look at historical information and making sure that it was recorded correctly. Operational auditing focuses on the future, so what is the company doing now and what can we do in the future to make them more effective and efficient. Distribution of the report, financial obviously goes to external users, and operational will be given to management or the board. So it stays within.
Usually you would not want that to go out to the public, right? You're identifying your strengths and weaknesses and competitive advantages and disadvantages. You know, what your plans are for fixing things into the future. You know, this is for internal way of running your business. You're trying to improve your operations, right?
And the differences in the non-financial areas, financial audits are limited to the fairness of the financial statements, where an operational audit can be given on anything that management wants to look at. So it's more flexible and it can cover any aspect of the company. Effectiveness basically means, are you meeting your objectives that management sets out? And an example in the book is if they were auditing the elevator safety within a city. So they would want to determine how many inspections they've had in the last year, or making sure that no one had a fatality because of the elevators. And then you would test to see if you were meeting those objectives.
If something's effective, what does that mean? It works. Strategy's effective. Plan's effective, right? Your procedure's effective. It works. It does the job. Well, it's efficient. It does it at a low cost. Now, if you have trade-offs between effectiveness and efficiency sometimes, might you be more effective if you spend more money, less efficient? Yes. Might you be more efficient and less effective if you spend less money? Yeah. What are you looking for? Things that accomplish both, right? You want to get both. What you'd really like to have is acceptable effectiveness. You probably won't get maximum, right? I mean, I suppose if you drove around in a Lamborghini, you know, you would have a more effective mode of transportation. I wouldn't know. I've never driven one, right? But you might, or a Rolls Royce or something. But would it be more efficient, perhaps, to have, I don't know, a Volkswagen Bug? Yeah. Is it as effective? Probably not. There are trade-offs there, right? But you know, you can go on the other end of the spectrum and you can buy some old beater, right? It's more, it's better efficiency in terms of the cost of the thing, but not particularly effective. So you're on a continuum on those things for most of the time right now. So where do you come out? What's nice is when you get solutions that are very effective and very efficient, really nice. And that's what you're looking for, right? In operational audit. Are we accomplishing both?
And so, like you said, efficiency is we've set these objectives. What resources can we use to achieve those? So working with the objectives that you set.
Right.
And some types of inefficiency, these are just some examples. Acquisition of goods and services is too costly. Raw materials are not available when the company needs them. There are two employees that are doing the same job, but they don't know that the other person is doing the same job. And then people are completing work that isn't serving the company any purpose. It's basically just busy work. Or you have too many employees.
So people aren't doing anything, maybe. Yeah. Someone.
Yeah.
What if you have too few employees? Probably not very effective. Have you guys ever gone into a store that was not effective because they didn't have anybody to wait on anybody? You can't find things, and and they don't even have the things out of the shelf in the right places. They don't have enough employees, right? Or they're not doing the job at least, right? So it's very ineffective. Have you ever gone into places where people are just crawling all over you? Geez, how inefficient is this place? Can't get anything done because they're in each other's way, right? So I've seen both environments a lot. Happens a lot. I've seen situations where the same report is being prepared by several people in the organization, for different managers. Exactly the same report, they don't know about it. But horribly inefficient use of time, huh? And then usually they're too busy. They're working overtime to get that done, right? To get all the stuff done because they just have way too much to do, even though they're duplicating efforts. So you can see how this is real, huh? The organization. Sure.
And then also management will establish internal controls within the company to meet the effectiveness and efficiency objectives that they have set forth. And in order they will use internal control to meet the objectives of reliability of financial information, efficiency and effectiveness, and compliance with laws and regulations. So pretty straightforward. And then distinguishing between internal control and testing for financial and operational auditing. So the purpose, operational auditing, is used to make recommendations to management on how they can improve a certain segment of their company, where financial auditing will determine the extent of audit testing and report to the effectiveness of the internal control over just the financial reporting. So once again, operational is more flexible than financial auditing would be. And the scope, operational auditing can be any control affecting the efficiency or effectiveness, and financial is restricted only to what controls the financial reporting.
Don't you think operational auditing would be kind of fun? Ways you can make more money? Not that financial auditing doesn't have its benefits. It's kind of fun too, but it's a whole different world.
There are three categories of operational audits. The first is a functional audit, and this is done by categorizing the different parts of a business. So you could look at just production or just payroll, and you could have an accounting function, but that could be subdivided into like a cash disbursement, cash receipts, payroll, and then those subdivisions could also be divided into other subdivisions. So you would be auditing one functional unit of a business. And you can also do more than one because the functions can work together. So if you're auditing one function, it may cause you to audit another function because they affect each other. An advantage of this type of operational audit is it allows internal auditors to specialize in a certain functional unit of the business. So you could have one internal auditor that just does the accounting, and then another internal auditor could just do production. A disadvantage of this would be that they may not recognize when those functions overlap. An organizational audit deals with an entire organizational unit, so like an entire department or an entire branch. So it's broader than a functional unit would be. And then a special assignment is the last category, and this is anything that management may request you to audit. So you could, as an example, determine the cause of an ineffective IT system. And this may not be something that you've ever done, but it's just because management requested that it be completed. And then people who can perform operational audits are internal auditors. The only issue with this is that they, even though they have an advantage because they work within the company, if they did an operational audit on, say, the production system, if they created a production system, they won't be able to audit it again because they've already created it.
That makes sense, guys. Look at what's happened to them. You get audited, your own work, right? Not independent, not objective even, right? You want to be careful in all these environments not to audit your own work, of course. Okay? If you're an external CPA, we'd say you're not independent. If you're an internal CPA or governmental, right, accountant, you'd say you're not objective. Fine. Either way, you're out.
Also, government auditors, and the standards for these performance audits are set forth in the Yellow Book, just like all the government audit standards are. And they perform economy and efficiency audits, which economy is just efficiency and effectiveness put together. And the purpose of this is to see if the entity is using their resources efficiently and if they've complied with laws and regulations. And then program audits can see if the objectives are being met, if there's effectiveness of the government programs, and whether the entity has complied with laws and regulations. And then they can also be performed by a CPA firm, which, I mean, we've talked about like 100 times, so it basically just goes through all that information in the book again. And then qualities of an operational auditor must be independent and competent. The criteria for evaluating efficiency and effectiveness, there are specific criteria, and there are examples in the book.
On auditing financial statements, what's the specific criteria that we use? GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. What's the problem when you get into something like operational auditing? Whether you're an internal auditor doing it, an external auditor doing it, a governmental auditor doing it, right? You know, so it's internal auditing if the internal auditor does it, right? But it's also operational auditing. Way to think about it. Okay, it's a consulting deal for an external auditor coming in and doing it. Makes sense. If a governmental auditor is doing it, they're doing that as part of the financial statement audit too, probably. Okay. So, but where do those criteria come from? Oh, it's a little tougher, isn't it? Right? Depends on, you know, what was the grant for? If it's a grant, you know, it's being audited on, right? Okay. Or what is the organization trying to accomplish, right? So you'd have criteria for the things that you were going to do. So that's why they have a variety of them. So can you envision what those things might look like? So there's the criteria, historical performance and so on. What are examples of those?
Historical would be like, what have we done in the past? Did it work? Has it not worked? Benchmarking.
And data statistics on it?
Yeah.
Right? Operations, right? How well did the operations work before? You know, what have we measured? And then you're measuring against that historical, right? So we have a historical record, and then how are we doing relative to the historical record? Are we improving or whatever? Sure. What's benchmarking?
Comparing yourself to
What's that?
comparing to either yourself or other entities.
Yeah, probably other entities usually, huh? So you have somebody that is, the benchmark is something you'd like to achieve. Or you might just set the benchmark for yourself too. That's true. Okay, and you compare what you did to, you know, what you would hope to do, or what somebody else is doing, right? Okay. And educational institutions have benchmark universities that we do, you know, that we aspire to, right? Aspirant universities. So that's our benchmark that we'd like to achieve. similar things in terms of growth or you name it, right? Okay, quality programs or something. What about engineering standards? Whole profession of engineering that have what? Written out standards for quality, right? So if you think about, what's it called, ISO 9,000 or whatever, yeah, anyway, very big numbers now, quality control, right? Okay, so we have engineering standards set for all sorts of things. We're trying to reach certain levels, but with discussion and agreement.
Just within management or internal auditors.
Yeah, just come up with it, make a list yourself. Probably not as good a criteria. You do using that, I suppose. Like you need evidence drawn from discussions, right? Conversations. Okay.
And then the 3 phases of an operational audit. Obviously, you have to plan the audit, so determining the scope, staffing it, understanding the internal controls you'll be using, and setting forth your objectives.
Sounds a lot like auditing the financial statement procedure.
And then you have evidence accumulation and evaluation, which is just like a financial audit, and then reporting and follow-up. So reporting to management, to the board of directors, and following up with your results.
Follow-up's a little different. Do we give people audits? Do we do all these things for an audit of financial statements other than follow-up? Yeah. Right? We're going to get a report. Right? That's audit opinion. Okay. But follow-up, what's that? You make recommendations to them, and then you judge whether or not they follow them. So if you're an internal auditor, you make recommendations to an operation, a division or something, and then you come in later and you actually follow up on whether or not they implemented those recommendations and whether or not they worked. Got the idea? So it's a little different, isn't it? Right? Which obviously, making recommendations to people that are not following it is kind of a waste of your time. I always make fun of consulting. I used to work as a consultant. You go out and you charge people a whole lot of money. When you go ask them what's going wrong, and then you ask them how they would fix it, and then you write up a report that tells them what went wrong and how they should fix it, which is pretty much what they told you. But you talk to a whole bunch of different people. I'm not kidding. You kind of do that, and you figure out who knows what they're doing, who doesn't. Right? So you put that together, and then you give it to them, and then they don't do it, and the next year you come back and do exactly the same thing again. Not really kidding. Terrible. People spend a lot of money for consultants. They don't trust their own people internally. When you're working as a manager, have enough sense to use your own people to do what they are capable of doing. They're cheaper than going out and getting outside consultants. When do you use outside consultants? When you don't have the expertise within your own group, or they're not independent, which they're not, right? But if they're not objective, maybe you need to go outside to get somebody who's objective, who's not trying to protect themselves, right, within the organizations. From that standpoint, it's better. But you shouldn't disrespect the people you've already got. Why not use their expertise? Because I thought as a consultant, I'd get the answers from people who were working there. Almost always, and then add a little bit to it. That's sad. They paid us a whole bunch of money for that. But didn't feel they could do it internally. Tell us what we were doing there. And then I'd also, after a couple of years, say, please start implementing some of these things. This is ridiculous. You're paying us over and over again to solve the same problem over and over again. It doesn't get solved because you don't implement. Right? People don't want to hear that necessarily. But obviously, the ethical thing to do. I don't know. Right? So, it's an interesting area to work in.
And I have some Quizlet note cards. Just like Ryan, I like to use these to study, just because they have a lot of multiple choice questions and they're free, which is always nice. Okay, so internal auditors are expected to add value to the organization through improved operational effectiveness. Their responsibilities include all the following except.
Have you guys found questions that I've used yet?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. Sorry. It's okay. Somebody jump in. Who wants to do this one? To tell us why the answers are wrong and right. That's always fun. You got a taker? Is that a taker? You want to do it?
I'm going to go with C, because they are not responsible to external users.
Good job. Let's see, it's
Okay,
really little.
go back and tell us why the other ones aren't right. operational effectiveness, additional responsibility include all the following except. They do all those other things? Okay, why do you like that one? It says external, right? It's operational, right? Internal, so it's not for external people in general. So you get that word external in there, wow, you're done, right? So you just read the other ones and yeah, you do all that stuff. Okay. Fine.
Statements on the internal auditing standards are issued by the, we got a big long talk about this. Yeah, it's good enough.
These are just so challenging.
Yeah.
Anything about that one?
Does the board of directors include the audit committee?
Yes.
So
The audit committee is a subset of the board of directors. Yes. So it's the board, isn't it? And even in the old days, you wouldn't have an audit committee, maybe. You still have a board, you want to reporting directly to the board. But now it's the audit committee of the board. Group of the audit committee. The audit committee is a group of the board. Do you want a reporting to management? No. Okay. So, you guys know who Lee Thomas was? Hung out here. No, it's been long enough. He was the executive residence here. He was president, CEO for Vermont American. So it's a major corporation, Fortune 1000 corporation. Big, or bigger than that maybe. Anyway, it's one of the biggest companies in Louisville, and he sold out. But anyway, he became kind of rich as a result. So real rich. So he'd hang out here, and he thought that the internal auditor should report directly to the president because he always had his report to him, and that's how he monitored what his managers were doing. Well, if they don't report to me, how would I find out what's going on in my organization? Right? How would I have any really find out if I wasn't somebody to investigate something? Well, that's not the purpose of internal audit, right? It's for the board to control what's going on in the business, including the president. So he'd get really angry with it. He'd be in auditing class and I'd say, no, that's wrong. Can't do that anymore. That was ridiculous. So I'd say, well, who's watching you? And he says, nobody needs to watch me. Yeah, so anyway, yeah. Which was true in his case, by the way.
Which of the following is not a similarity between external and internal auditors?
How about now? A. By definition, internal auditors are not independent.
In the book it says they are though.
I know they did, and then they say that. So is there an answer there? Is one of the other ones the answer? Do they both have to be competent? God, I hope so. Similar methodology?
I don't know about that.
Well, it depends on what they're working on, right? Well, that's interesting. But the methodology, even then, it seemed kind of similar to planning and so on.
It's similar to the AICPA,
Yeah.
not the methodology of internal auditing.
I would say A, just because it says like they must be independent, and it would be great if they were, but they can also be objective.
Yeah, I think this is really muddled, isn't it? When the internal auditors wrote their stuff, it's like, oh, we're independent. Well, no, you're not. By definition, if you're an external auditor, you're not. You work for the company. But what did the authors say? What did the author of this question? What did they come up with? Well, isn't that awful?
In the text, it never said they were like independent of company. It just said that they had to have like independence of like what they were auditing.
Yeah,
Like,
independence of thought, be independent from the thing they're auditing.
Like,
And we would say, as external auditors would say, yes, they need to be objective.
So
You can't be objective if you're auditing your own work, right? But we really think this independence thing is important, and we think it belongs to us. We are the only ones as external CPAs who are independent doing an audit. And that's why we need to exist. That's why we need to make big bucks, right? Because we are truly independent, right? So it's kind of our thing, right? So we're really very protective of that. And it's interesting, in an auditing textbook, it's hard to write independent. Because the standards do stay independent for internal, but they're not really independent by definition. So who wrote that question, you suppose? An external CPA or an internal CPA? That's an external wrote that one. You bet. And that's kind of tough, too, because when you're answering these questions, you have to figure out what's the perspective of the person writing the question almost. You notice that? You guys have worked a lot of answers are a lot of times, can't you? Where should you go? Yes.
So if you ask us a test question, you ask if they're independent.
I'm an external auditor. What do you think?
Yes.
I think you have to be independent, which means not work for the company. You can't be independent unless you are.
No,
You
so
cannot
if
be an
you
employee of a
ask
company
us-
and be independent.
If you ask us if internal auditors are independent, the answer would be no.
That's right. That's what I'd say. They just by definition are not.
Just making sure, I
Yeah,
want to be clear.
that's what I would say. Now watch, I'll give you a question that goes the other way. You guys have never experienced that with me before, though. We could disagree with an answer to my question there. Yeah, never. Of course not. Okay.
So external auditors would consider internal auditors effective if they are. These are bulleted in the text too.
Well, they just changed the answer. The first one says they have to be independent again.
Says independent of operating.
Yeah, that's right. There you go. You got it.
Kind of
Yeah, so they put it, excuse me, they put it in there. They gave it to you, didn't they? So instead of independent of the company, they're independent of the operating unit. Okay, so that's nuance to know.
Which of the following is most correct regarding external auditors' use of internal auditors?
That's an interesting one. That's a tough one. I hope it's not A and B, so then you gotta go for C or D, right?
B, C.
Yeah. You don't have to encourage it, do you? But you can permit it, right? You are permitted to use them. Just don't rely upon their work as evidence, right? They are internal control, but they're really handy to get PBCs. What's PBC? Prepared by client. Got it. If you got an internal auditor, they're collecting all this evidence themselves all the time. Are they really handy for putting together information for you that you then audit? Yeah, they're fantastic. So sure, you got to do a lot of stuff. Yeah, permit's good.
The international standards for the professional practice of internal auditing include which two categories of standards?
No? All right.
It was in an exhibit. It breaks it down. Yes. I think that was 26-2, I believe. Yeah. The professional organization which is responsible for providing guidance for internal auditors.
What does that stand for? Institute of Internal Auditors. What is their certification called? They're CIA. Isn't that cool? You can be a CIA all by yourself. Right? Yeah, Central Intelligence Agency. Yeah. They're a certified internal auditor. Yeah.
External financial statement auditors must obtain evidence regarding what attributes of an internal audit department if the external auditors intend to rely on the internal auditor's work. It's hard to see them all.
You're relying on their work for what?
To reduce
Your substantive work. So therefore, their work must be what? Internal control. So if they do a really nice job, internal controls are strong. They're looking at stuff. They're auditing stuff all the time, right? Okay? That's a monitoring activity, really, if you think about it, right? They're monitoring what's going on in the business. They're evaluating things, right? Correcting things. And so training people, all that, improving internal controls. So you're going to evaluate the internal controls as stronger as a result of them, right? You still test those controls, test that they're doing what we think they're doing. Okay, so we beat that. Yeah. So are any of those fit though? Okay.
Sorry.
Hey.
Now they think it's A. Okay, yeah.
Sorry.
Anyway, but what's the deal? If they have performed relevant audit tests of internal controls financial statements, what is it? Competence? Yes, yes.
Like if they've done both of those, then they can rely.
Okay, so yes. Okay. If they have performed relevant audit tests of the internal controls and financial statements, competence is no. Well, geez, I don't know about that. They perform relevant audit tests and the comments, yes, no, oh, okay, maybe it's not so hard enough. Gotta both be the case, right? They gotta be confident they have done the work. So that's cool. That's a weird question. I bet that's not a CPA exam.
What are the similarities between internal and external? These don't have choices.
Confidence?
Independent of the company.
If that was one of
Independent of
those
the
that means-
particular operation. That's what I think is simpler.
Similar methods,
What's that?
similar methods.
Right. Yeah, probably true. What else they got?
Something they have to consider. Risk and material.
Risk. Boarding, planning, test, and control.
Similar methodology.
External auditors.
Go back to that for 1 second, the second sentence. The decisions about material risk may differ because external users may have different needs than management of the board. Okay, that's fine. That makes sense.
External auditors typically consider internal auditors effective if they meet 3 criteria. I think we already did these a couple questions ago. Does anyone remember?
What are the 3 criteria?
Competent,
Competence.
technically independent.
Yeah, at least objective, yeah, objective/independent, whatever it means in that environment. What else?
And if they like tested internal.
In financial statement.
Okay, yeah. Competent,
Good job.
well-trained is competent, I guess. Experience, it's sort of experience and training both, right, go into competence. Competent, yeah, both. Right.
Independence is a fundamental ethical principle for internal auditors.
True.
There we went back to external auditor wrote it, right? What if they said, if you add, I kind of like that, you guys came up with that. Independence relative to the function being audited.
Yes.
Yeah, then we can say yes, right? Independence relative to the company, that's what they should have on this one.
Yeah.
Have to be independent of the company? Well, no. Yeah, it'd be false, that's impossible. By the way, are we really independent as external auditors? Most of you guys are going to go to work as external auditors at first. In external CPA firm, some function anyway. Are we really independent of our clients? Don't they pay our fees? A lot of people would say, no, we are not independent. But then the only solution to that is for us either to work for free, on there, or we'd have to be government employees. I don't like either one of those, do you?
No.
So we're as independent as we can be. You need to be independent in your client now. You really got to be able to walk away from that client. Okay. So.
Does anyone know what the 4 fundamental ethical principles are?
Integrity, objectivity, confidentiality, and competence.
Good job.
I would
Yes,
guess
and see, there they use objectivity. Yeah. Okay.
Current professional auditing standards prohibit external users from using internal auditors.
Or direct assistance. Direct assistance. Can you use them for assistance as long as they are not collecting evidence and evaluating evidence and doing the actual auditing of evidence? Can you use them to assist with it? Let's see. What do you guys think? Yes or no on this? Direct assistance.
Direct goes.
God, that's tough, isn't it?
It depends on the assistant.
What do they mean? Yeah. What if it says, can we use them to collect evidence? Can we use them to evaluate risk? Things like that.
No.
That'd be no. But can we have them assist us? Collecting information? Yes. What do they mean? What do they do with the answer here?
False.
So that means that we can do what?
And
Prohibit, we can use them, that's all it means, right? So you just have to interpret it. It's not a terrible question. I think I would have answered that, yeah, that's fine. They can be direct, they can be of direct assistance, they just can't do auditing, right? They can't perform audit procedures on our behalf.
Internal auditors are expected to provide value to the organization through improved operational effectiveness.
Yeah, let's hope so.
The objectives of internal auditors are considerably broader than the objectives of external auditors.
Sure.
And why is that?
Because they cover all. They don't just do financial statement auditing, they do operational auditing, effectiveness and efficiency, right guys? Compliance auditing, you know.
So is integrity one of the 4 ethical principles?
Yes.
Internal auditing standards are included in the Blue Book.
No, it's pink. Yeah.
Professional guidelines for performing internal audits for companies are not as well defined as for external audits.
So think about the auditing standards, financial statement auditing standards, SASs, and public company accounting oversight board standards, versus the guidelines for performing internal audits. This is not governmental; those are pretty well laid out, right? In the yellow book, and yeah, they're in detail. They are in detail, so they can make a constant spread. What would you say here, though? True. Probably true. Yeah. More up to you.
Internal Auditing Standards Board issues statements on internal auditing standards.
Yeah. True.
Because they spend all their time within one company, internal auditors have much greater knowledge about the company's operations and internal controls than an external auditor.
You would hope so.
Primary source of authoritative literature for doing government audits is the...
Don't you hope you get a question like this? I tell you what, though, all the years that they had the exams open so you could see the questions, there were questions like that on the exam. The exams, you'd look at it, what? Are you kidding me? They really asked that? Did anybody miss it? You know, so maybe. Yeah.
I'm sure there's people that missed that.
There must be. Well, they test the questions, and if nobody's missed them, they throw them away. Right? If nobody's getting them right, they throw them away too. Their fears not written down. So they try to have questions to measure something. They do diagnostics in the exams.
When a state or local government agency receives federal funds, it is subject to the audit requirements of... It's a little more technical.
What do you think?
Go back up to the question.
Yeah, better go back to the question. Didn't tell you how much, did they?
No. No. It's over 500,000.
If it's over 500,000, they let it here. What are they?
Single audit.
It's a single audit.
O&B expanded the Single Audit Act to company or organizations with less than 500,000.
Okay.
There's like higher education and other
Yeah.
Oh, so O&B Circular A133 is for which organizations again did you say?
colleges and other not-for-profit.
So that's not state or local, is it? So that would be a no at the end, would you say? Or this is the state and local government. Oh, that's a tough question, isn't it? So are they under the Single Audit Act, state or local government? Are they under the yellow book? Is that a yes, yes, no? Is that where you guys are?
Sorry.
Oh, go back. Let's see. Yes, yes, yes. Take a look at O&B Circular 133 again then.
Page 813.
Yep.
Page 13. then well, OMB Circular A133 at the top of page 813 says audits of states, local governments, and nonprofit organizations. Where did you read that it applied to others? At the bottom of that section? The AICPA Audit Guide, Government Auditing Standards and Circular A133 Audits, and the Auditing Standards Compliance on The way I read that is it's for audits of states, local governments, and nonprofit, not just nonprofit. Where did you read that it was universities and nonprofits?
Oh, I just read where it had extended it to include them.
Oh, it extended it to include them. Oh, I got you. Okay. The Single Audit Act applied only to audits of state and local governments, but it's extended in 1990 to higher education institutions and other not-for-profits. Okay, in 1990. So what it did was it's now on state, local and state, and universities. Okay, not just universities. Okay. All right. So then, what does that do for us then? It should be all three, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Good. So C.
Which of the following is the most correct with regard to the comparison of the financial auditing standards of the Yellow Book with the principles of the AICPA auditing standards? Yes. And then it is consistent, but it is more specific too. So.
Yeah, they didn't say they were exactly the same, right, in the chapter. But they said they weren't. Yeah, they said that they were somewhat similar.
Because they were similar, and then
similar,
it laid out the more specific standards.
Okay.
The correct title of the Yellow Book is
Which one of those did you take? A.
Governmental Auditing Standards recognize that because of public accountability over governmental activities, the acceptable, tolerable misstatement as compared to commercial businesses may be.
Tolerable misstatement is the amount you're willing to be off on a number before you think it's materially incorrect, right? That's going to be our tolerable misstatement. When we get into that chapter, we'll talk about that. Okay, how much am I willing to be off by? What do I tolerate? I guess tolerable misstatement. So lower, if you're worried about that, right? Fraud, okay? Government funds, you're worried about them. You guys like B?
The Single Audit Act requires the audit be conducted for.
Yeah, so, you learn something in this chapter. How about that? That's pretty nitpicky, but they ask a lot for it. It's important.
An audit designed to provide reasonable assurance of detecting material misstatements resulting from non-compliance with provisions or grants that have a material and direct effect on the financial statements would be A.
Graham, which one do you think that is? Non-compliance. Is that, you guys said D? C, D, D, okay, what do you got? It's designed to provide reasonable assurance of protecting material misstatements resulting from non-compliance. See, that's a financial statement audit.
Yeah, I don't think we.
I think the answer to that is it's a financial statement audit. The audit designed to provide reasonable assurance of protecting material misstatements. Material misstatements in a financial statement are about financial statement auditing. It has the material and direct effect. You have to look for those in a financial statement audit. That's not any of those. Uh-oh. But in a compliance audit, what do? You look for compliance with laws and regulations. They must want that to be compliance, I guess. Am I reading it wrong?
I think it's C.
They get to be operational?
It's like when they kept giving you like bullet points, the last one is always like make sure that they comply with all the laws and regulations.
Well, yeah. Is material, assurance of detective material, I guess that could be. What do they say?
D.
Okay. Well, it is a compliance audit, but that's not what a compliance audit is. A compliance audit is, are they complying with the rules and regulations of the contract? Okay, I guess they don't want to do any more.
What?
Let me look at it.